Hello there, this is David Brower, bringing you today's episode 5 of the Make Living Pleasurable Show. Today I have a special guest, Ian Young, who we're going to be speaking about pleasure in sobriety. To explore this subject, we have some great questions and we'll see what else comes up. So let me see, without further ado, if I can bring Ian into the conversation. Just bear with me 1 second. He should be joining any second here. There we go. Is that you, Ian? There he is. Okay, so Ian is going to request to join this Facebook Live space. We're going to invite him onto the screen any second now. And we'll be able to start the conversation in the Make Living Pleasurable Show here. Here we go. Inviting Ian into the room. It's always this beginning moment, the anticipation. Let's see. Three, two, one. There he is, Mr. Ian Young. Welcome to the Make Living Pleasurable Show.
Try and get this at an angle that's at least vaguely flattering.
Yeah, let's do something complimentary for your dreadlocks, okay?
I have said,
Looking good, looking good. Yeah, my hair's back, but I'm not doing the dreadlock thing. I was going to do a man bun, but I didn't want to show you up, so I said, let's hold back.
I was wearing a man bun before. Now it's still just a bit complicated. I'm glad to see you shaved your Taliban beard.
Thank you. Yes, I formed it a bit. You like it? Is it better?
Yeah.
Good. You should have said something, you know. Welcome everyone to the Make Living Pleasurable Show, where we explore how to integrate more pleasure into your life in ways that sometimes don't seem so obvious. And this is the 5th in the series that we are going to continue on to infinity in all different areas and subjects, even ones that stretch us and that don't seem so obvious and that are contrasting. And today, I wanted to bring on a dear friend and a masterful expert in what he does, my dear friend Ian Young, world-class addiction consultant. We'll leave links at the end about all the places that you can explore and learn more about Ian. But welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Comment ça va là-bas au jeune, joli Paris?
Ben, ça va bien. On arrive à sortir à faire la fête, donc tout va bien.
Ah oui, vous faites la fête?
Ouais, pas mal.
Sur l'île j'habite sur l'île de toutes les fêtes du monde. Tout le monde qui fait la teuf, il vient à cette île où j'habite.
Ah oui?
I'm on the island. I'm literally living sober on Party Island.
So where do you live, Ian?
I live in Koh Phangan. Famous for the full moon party.
Famous for the full moon party. Wow.
Yeah, every month, 50,000 people would come onto this island for the full moon party. Every month. So then they had the half moon parties, then they had the quarter moon parties, then they had the Saturday parties, then they had all the other parties. Then it was a party every day of the week. So the people that live on this island are party people. So it is the party island of the world.
Oh, that's interesting. So this is
all year round.
And this is in Thailand.
This is in Thailand, next to Koh Samui.
So how does, let's get into this. How does one actually live on the biggest party island in the world as a sober, drug or drinking or substance consumer? Is that
sure?
Is that possible? Is that even pleasurable?
Well, pleasurable, absolutely. Possible, of course. The reality is that for me, I'm neutral around drugs and alcohol. I'm neutral around it. Yeah, despite 13 years of chronic alcoholism, daily intoxication, 7 years of psychedelics and hallucinogenics and ecstasy and stimulants, 7 years of amphetamines, cocaine, stimulants, and opiates, heroin. You know, despite intravenous drug use and smoking crack from various types of pipes, despite all that, when I found recovery and when I gave myself to a life of recovery, at a certain point, and it was probably like 18 months into it, I became neutral around drugs and alcohol. You know, so I remember going back to France where I had been causing a lot of mischief. And my friends, I went back to DJ and my friends were there and they were messed up. And so I was making wraps for them to put their MDMA in. And I've been making joints for people because they're rubbish at making joints and I'm quite good because I can. You know, I pulled out of my records hundreds of paper trips, yeah, LSD. And I don't have to take it. I can just give it away. I pulled out of my records like 0.5 gram of heroin, and I didn't need to test it or taste it or add citrus to it or dissolve it. I knew it was heroin. I was able to throw it away. Another time I pulled out of one of my old records 5 grams of cocaine. I knew it was cocaine. I didn't need to taste it. I didn't need to put it in lines. I didn't need to see how it dissolved in water. I didn't need to see how it washed up with bicarb or ammonia. I intuitively knew it was cocaine. I even knew it was one of the 5 grams that I used to sell because there's only about 4 in there. And I was able to throw it away. I'm neutral around that stuff. And of course, I go back to environments where there's drugs and alcohol, and I'm there for different reasons. I'm there to appreciate the music and the vibe and the people and the. Yeah, and I enjoy dancing. You know, I like losing myself in the dance.
Beautiful. So you can be in an environment surrounded by people who are kind of drugged and in their own thing, etc., and not. I mean, clearly you don't have any. Well, it sounds like you don't have any attraction or anything to that, but the way that they act and the way that they're being is not something that you feel like you can't relate, you disconnect, you're not connecting with them because they're on some other, they're in some other kind of state, no?
It's 10 o'clock. I'm tired. Think I'll go home now. I don't need to stay up late. I go to ecstatic dancing on Sundays where everybody's sober. It's from like 11 a.m. through till sort of 4 p.m. Yeah. It's not a drug or an alcohol-induced dance, but they're playing dance music. They're playing techno music or trance or whatever the DJ's playing.
Yeah.
And I dance for 3-4 hours completely sober. Everybody's sober, and at the end we all go off and watch a sunset together. It's a completely different trip. But if there's a party where everyone's getting drunk, I'll be there until I get bored, and then I go home and I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I let them take care of the mess. I work on a resort that's full of booze. You know, and I'm responsible for organising parties. You know, my responsibilities with this resort is what brings in money. So yeah, we organise pool parties and birthday parties and stuff around the bar, and I encourage everyone to drink.
I mean, what better person to have than someone sober to take care of the booze?
Well, that's what I do at Glastonbury. When I work at Glastonbury, I go there and I'm responsible for all the bars and all the cash and all the money, and I have a little porta cabin. And, I go around and I get up. I'm one of the first up each morning, putting all the stock into all the bars in our field, and I don't go to sleep until an hour and a half after our field is closed, and our field is an all-night field. So I go to bed at like 7:30 in the morning, and I'm responsible for making sure that the money behind all of our bars, behind all the tills, is collected and counted so that everyone can get paid at the end. So my dual role of have an Arctic trailer full of booze to distribute between all of our bars and then collect the money. And the reason why I have this job, because I this is for the people that remember me when I was getting off my tits. And the reason why they employ me is because they know that I don't need to drink the booze. I'm not going to nick the booze. They know that I don't need to steal the money. And they know that I'm not going to be off my head and that I'll get the job done. And I do. It's the hardest working week of my year.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it. I go there and I just work backwards, upside down times.
That's amazing. So let me ask you some other questions here. I mean, you know, I think a lot about addiction, and, you know, sometimes even wonder for myself, are there some things in my life that I'm addicted to or not? And I just wanted to ask, I mean, when does someone know when they're addicted to something, whatever it is? What's your way of ascertaining that?
When I talk to people, I do assessments with people. What I'm listening for, and the question that I then go on to ask them is, are they emotionally available to the people that they love? Or if you have become emotionally unavailable to the people that you know that you love, your children, your spouse, your parents, your friends, your mates, your colleagues, if you become emotionally unavailable to them because you're distracted by your substance, process, behavior, addiction, whatever it is, that's the boundary for me. When do you become emotionally unavailable to the people that you love?
So, but this seems to leave a pretty high level of inebriation, of consumption of. I mean, it seems like you could, you know, drink pretty heavily, take some kind of drugs, kind of frequently, and mostly be still emotionally available, and that you wouldn't consider this person addicted.
Sure. Most people on the planet get really weekend, but they're not addicted to alcohol. They just like getting drunk at the weekend. Most people go out, hang out with their friends and do a night on cocaine and ecstasy, and then go to work the next day and make sure that the kids have a bath and get new clothes and make sure that their wife is taken care of. Most people party, but they don't have consequences with that. They go back to work afterwards. Then there's about 10% of people like me who start partying on Thursday and finish on Tuesday and sleep for 36 hours. But we're not normal people. We're a different breed. So the people that you're describing go out and get heavily intoxicated, they're just going out and getting heavily intoxicated. They're just having a good time. And most people on the planet do that.
So I've always had this story that I've told myself about Jim Morrison, and I want your take on this. But I always said to myself that when he came to Paris at the end of his life to kind of get away or escape, and he came with his girlfriend, lady friend, and he ended up, it seems, overdosing in the bathtub. The story that I've told myself is that he lived in such a state of, you know, altered state, a different sort of state of reality, or his reality, you know, very like lost hedonic, just like inebriated all the time, it seems, so out there that was his reality. And so as he started to maybe sober up a little bit when he came to Paris, he suddenly came to some kind of realization. Again, I'm making this story up in my own head, but he came to kind of the realization that he wouldn't be able to emotionally handle, he didn't want to be able to handle potentially what he would have to face, realizing that he wouldn't be able to, you know, go off into his own reality, and maybe he was getting back to wanting to make films or whatever really the story is. But does that hold any water, what I'm fantasizing?
My understanding of Jim Morrison is that he was immersed in drug culture. It became his identity. You know, the Doors being named after the Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, which is all about LSD exploration. He was immersed in psychedelic discovery at the forefront of that whole culture, which was enormous in those days. It was enormous. He was part of something that was massive. Now, I identify with that because I was part of the rave explosion, and it was massive, and it was my identity. And for me to shake that identity, it was really difficult. It took me 3 years to come into recovery because I didn't want to accept or admit that I'd been beaten by the drugs. And from what I know of Jim's story, he had the same disease as me, and once he realized that he couldn't manage his affairs or his emotional state anymore by losing control through LSD, he tried to gain control through alcohol. The alcohol was his attempt to, funny how it sounds, but by drinking he was trying to be sober. He was trying to get some sanity back because it was something that gave him security, whereas the LSD years had given him so much uncertainty. Now he was trying to get some control back, and the alcohol was his tool to do that. So he just shifted with his addictive disease into alcoholism, which is quite easy for many of us to do. I mean, I was alcoholic throughout my addiction because it's so prevalent. Then it's my understanding that he overdosed in the bath, sadly, not on purpose. Whatever was involved with that, I don't know. I wasn't there. But it's a tragic case. He was 29, I think. Was he 29 or 27? He was in his when he died. And I remember being that age and being in big trouble. I got sober at the age of 29. And I 26, 27, 28, 29, I was a mess. And I had 3 overdoses during that time. At any of those points, I could have overdosed and not been resuscitated, not come to. And sadly, Jim had one where there wasn't someone on hand to take care of him. Yeah, that's the difference. But he was he was an artist with addictive disease, like not all, but many artists are. I believe that addictive disease is a mental. It starts. Let me try and explain this. I believe that we are born with addictive disease, or those of us that are born with addictive disease, we have creative flair. We have the ability to focus on something and make magic happen. But yet we don't know how to synthesize our emotions appropriately. And we are constantly trying to control how we feel by understanding that when I drink, I feel like this. When I use cocaine, I feel like this. I like to feel like that. I know that if I add some heroin, I'll feel perfect. So I chase that feeling and I try to control my emotional state. That's what we're trying to do. So the best example I can give you is when the football team wins, I drink to celebrate. When the football team loses, I drink to commiserate. If it's a draw, I think, bugger it, let's get drunk. Whatever. My solution is alcohol is going to make this better. My solution is I want to feel like that, like I remember feeling the other time, and therefore I'm going to repeat that process. Yeah. And sadly, we get caught in a cycle where certain drugs are more physically addictive. And what the public sees is that physical addiction. They see the heroin addict who is physically addicted to the pain relief that it gives him. They don't necessarily connect with the cocaine addict who is mentally obsessed with changing how he feels, because ultimately he doesn't wake up in the morning and physically crave it. It's a mental obsession. But what both the heroin addict, the alcoholic, and the cocaine addict, and all of us have in common is that we are trying to artificially change how we feel, because internally we're not happy spiritually. There's something wrong with our essence, with our chi, with our nus, that feels maybe completely illusional or disillusional. It feels uncomfortable. For some reason, I get anxious really easy. I get stressed really easily. I get nervous really easy. I'm full of fear of people. I'm in a crowd of 15 of my friends and I think everybody hates me. I go into a party full of thousands of people and I focus on the one person that I know I had an argument with 6 years ago. I cannot get comfortable in my own skin. And I come to the conclusion that I want to be in control of my emotional state in order to feel better about myself. So what people don't realize is that if you take someone with addictive disease and you remove all the drugs, my disease gets worse, not better. Because now I'm completely hopeless. Now I'm just left with these powerful emotions that I cannot control and that are spiraling outside of me. And I'm feeling more and more helpless and hopeless because I can't even get enough alcohol in me to make myself feel better. If you remove drugs from me, I've lost my crutch. So drugs aren't actually the problem. They're my solution. The drugs and booze that I'm consuming is my solution to my spiritual problem. It's my solution to my emotional shortcomings. But the public just sees me as someone that's dependent physically, and it's not that at all. I'm using that, and I have become physically dependent. I agree, but I'm using it for reasons that the public doesn't really grasp. I'm using it in order to kind of feel like a whole person. I don't feel like you feel, but when I drink, at a certain point, I feel enough. So when we remove that, when someone goes through a detox, you know, the biggest misconception is that all someone needs to do is detoxify physically, because all you're doing is making the problem worse, unless you immediately follow with a course of behavioral change, psychological change, a way of changing my understanding of my relationship with drugs and alcohol, and let me understand, instead of trying to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol in order to help myself feel whole, help me understand that there's a better way for me to manage my emotional state, which I believe comes from spirituality. That by finding a spiritual path for myself, I can find a way of being able to sense, feel, experience wholeness, wellness, wowness. And I'll break it down and take away the woo-woo stuff. This isn't about wearing purple, burning incense, and dancing naked around a fire.
Spirituality, or maybe it is.
It could be, if that's what you want. And
whatever works.
Obviously, everybody likes some of that. But spirituality that I'm talking about, where our spirit is broken and we don't know how to appropriately synthesize our emotions, I like to refer to this as bubblegum spirituality. This is spirituality for the masses. This is like spirituality that everybody in the world could do, that you don't need to be a religious person or a person of faith. It's spirituality, I believe, is linked to humanity. Okay, now this is why a good friend of ours who does this Heaven on Earth talk, you remember the Heaven on Earth, Martin Rutt? Do you remember him?
No,
I
don't think I saw that.
You don't think so? So anyway, bubblegum spirituality. Two principles. Two principles of bubblegum spirituality. Number one, very famous. You've heard this before. You know this one. Do unto others as you'd like done to yourself. What's wrong with that? I know it's a Christian dogma, but it's okay. I believe they use it in other faiths and other religions too. Mm-hmm. Do to others as you'd like done to yourself. It's a really cool
universal law.
Are you for living? And that's spirituality. Just, you know, don't be a bastard. Be a nice guy, not be a good guy, not a bad boy. Do to others as you'd like done to yourself. Rule number two, bubblegum spirituality. If you can apply these two rules, you can be a spiritual person. Number two, do for others what they cannot do for themselves. So see where you can bring yourself. See where you can be something of use to other people, where you can contribute to the quality of other people's lives. My friend Tony says it the best. He says, the secret to living is giving. I love that. It's so simple. I was at one point exploring various religions out of interest. My sponsor was asking me to. And I came across the Dalai Lama, who's the spiritual leader of the Tibetan Buddhist people. And Buddhism is a funny thing. Living in Thailand, you go to some altars and they have these crazy effigies like Action Man and Batman and plastic animals that don't even come from this part of the world, like giraffes. It's crazy. They'll make anything idol. But put that aside. The Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people, who's living in exile from Tibet because the Chinese invaded Tibet and did atrocities to the Tibetan culture, the Tibetan religion. You know, they forced monks and nuns to fornicate and just did a whole bunch of atrocities. And the Dalai Lama fled from his country. And so living outside of his country, if you imagine the Queen of England not being allowed to go into England because it's been occupied by the French, and having to live in, I don't know, Portugal. This is how the Dalai Lama is. He can't go into Tibet, can't go into China, and he's hiding in northern India. And he said, a spiritual life is one being of service to others. And I thought, wow, that's what this is all about. A spiritual life is one being of service to others. The secret to living is giving. Do unto others as you'd like done to yourself, and do for others what they cannot do for themselves. And if you can find a way of adopting that as a kind of mode of operation inside your life, then my experience and my observations on my own emotional state is that since I've adopted that, I feel so good about myself that I don't have a desire to change how I feel anymore through drugs or alcohol or many of the other behaviors and processes that I adopted in my addictive disease, to self-medicate or to self-treat myself. That's by looking someone in the eye and smiling at them and getting a grin back fills me with joy. And that joy is more powerful than a line of cocaine this big. And I know what a line of cocaine this big feels like.
So is recovery a pleasurable pursuit? Because it sounds like it.
Look,
the way you describe it, it sounds like you're
being in active addiction, not so pleasurable. Maybe short term, 15, 20 minutes after that line. For a period of 45 minutes during my ascent through drinking, when I get to the merry stage before I get to the piss stage.
Peak.
There are peak moments. Hey, no one said getting high wasn't fun, but it has consequences. And whereas recovery doesn't have consequences. The only consequences of recovery is that you get your feelings back. And for better or worse. So when the cat dies, it's appropriate to feel sad. When you lose a member of the family, you have genuine and sincere emotional feelings of grief and remorse and sadness. And in early recovery, certainly these feelings are overwhelming. And many people can relapse because they don't know how to synthesize these emotions. It takes time and skill isn't the right word, but time and experience to be able to swallow, take a deep breath and know that it's going to be okay. I mean, my dad died when I was 5 years sober, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And at that time, I was able to manage it like an adult. I became the oldest male in my extended family, of my generation, and it felt like big shoes being handed over to me. And in many ways, I've ran away and shirked those responsibilities by heading 8,000 kilometers away to Thailand. But stuff goes down in life. I've had businesses where partners have screwed me over for lots of money. I've had opportunities where relationships have gone sour rather than stayed happy because whatever we're seeking financial reward rather than emotional or spiritual stimulation. It's love of money that is the root of all evil. Is the full quote? Not money. It's love of. And unfortunately, as someone who does my best to practice being a good guy, not a bad boy, I can get hurt by people who are ruthless and can see that kindness in other people and take advantage of it, and almost make a living out of taking advantage of kind people. Sad to watch. I'm pretty street, and yet I can still have people take the piss out of me and hurt me. I've had people die around me. I was married for 11 years, and I was kind of, I guess I'm kind of fortunate. When I talk to my friends about this, my reality was that my wife and I loved each other enough to let each other go. That we came to a point in our relationship where we realized that we had different goals in life, and that where we'd met 11 years previously to where we were then, we both evolved doing interventions with families and holding down these sober companion gigs, you know, in fabulous parts of the world. And she was staying at home with 2 dogs, 3 cats, and 3 horses. And I would come home from a big trip and, you know, find myself 8th in her pecking order. You know, she had other priorities: 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 3 horses that she had to feed and take care of before me. And yeah, my expectations of what I wanted for us was to travel around the world together, and her expectations were that we should stay at home together. She was a home girl, and I was an adventurous guy. 11 years later, you know, she was also sober. We loved each other enough to let each other go, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Wow.
But it brought
Quite
me a lot of sadness. Brought me a lot of sadness again, to know that that relationship that I'd invested time and effort and love and companionship and, you know, at that time, a quarter of my life to, had broken down.
Yeah.
Hadn't worked. These are tough things. Did I want to drink? No, I didn't want to drink. Did I want to throw some things at the wall? Yeah, sometimes. Did I want to scream and shout? Yeah, sometimes. Did I talk to my friends and share what was going on with me and get vulnerable with people that are close to me? Yeah. And did I find that useful? Yeah, very useful. I find it very useful to get vulnerable and open and sincere with a small amount of friends that I consider close enough to do that stuff with. And that's a good habit for me to have got into.
So it sounds like, Ian, thank you first of all for sharing all of this beautiful life story. It's an incredible life story. It sounds like to me that you found another way to obviously live your life, lead your life, and to get, you know, maybe a different sort of pleasure and pleasures in life that, I don't know if the word is fair to say replace former addictions and things. But how would you speak to, you know, what you're able to do, including your spirituality in this way of living, to be able to live the pleasurable life that actually, even as part of it, it sounds like to me, is you've actually grown emotionally, you know, and even maybe psychologically, conscious-wise, and to be able to kind of self-manage, have more self-agency, and in a way that doesn't feel like you're, you know, preventing yourself from living a pleasurable life.
Sure. Emotional sobriety is probably the best way to describe it. As I've grown up, you know, it's been 20 years now that I've been in recovery. I've learned new life skills and new ways to live and new ways to be a human being on this planet, rather than a human doing, be a human being. And for better or worse, I've learned a whole new set of skills, I think, for better. I am a better version of the person that I was born destined to be. I like to think of, you know, I knew who I was when I was a teenager, and yet I still chose to try to improve who I thought I was through chemistry. And getting sober, I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to resort back to being the person that I was destined to be. But I didn't necessarily know quite so clearly who that person was going to be. So I did what I was taught to do, or what I was shown to do. You know, got a mortgage, got a wife, got a little family going on, tried to do some work, ended up just preferring to work for myself, building business, paying taxes, paying a mortgage. I tried all that, and it didn't give me the same level of internal happiness that maybe I felt I deserved. And so when I did split up with my wife, for me, it was quite clear I was going to then go off and travel again, which I'd been doing in the 90s during my addiction. And I came out to Thailand approaching 4 years ago now. And it's like been a whole new rebirth for me, particularly since I've been on this island for the past year. I did 2 years in Chiang Mai, and then a year in Phuket where I have my rehab. And then the past 11 months I've been in Koh Phangan. on this small island that's very, I mean, it's known for the full moon parties, but the full moon parties were cancelled when COVID hit 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago now. So what you're left with is a bunch of misfits living on this island together, just trying to figure out what to do to amuse ourselves without the big parties. A whole load, you know, there's estimated there's about 2,000 to 2,500 Westerners living on this island, and the island is maybe 20,000 people in total. So we're about 10% of the population is Westerners, and so we kind of we don't run this island. We run around and we treat it like it's our home, and it kind of is our home. And there's a whole kind of hippie commune, free spirit vibe to this space. There's a lot of people from Burning Man that live up here, so it's that kind of what's going on here. There's a lot of people that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years. There's a handful of people that have been here 30 years and longer. You know, when it first started in the very late 80s, around the same time that I was taking off. You know, this is the Asian version of Ibiza. And the outcasts, you know, because we know that LSD and ecstasy and these psychedelics has a kind of cosmic culture that comes with it, that Jim Morrison was very enthralled with. And so essentially 30 years of people dropping lots of acid and DMT, a kind of alternative counterculture living here. So when I found myself here, 20 years sober, I realized that this was so much in line with so many rules and principles and things that I'd tried to leave behind when I got sober, that I left myself open to the new process. I left myself open to the possibilities. And yeah, it's blown my mind. I feel happy in my life. I'm so content with, I don't have a great income anymore. My rehab is still turning over, but it's some small salary, and most months it doesn't. Out of the 15 rehabs in Thailand when the pandemic hit, there's only 3 that are still open, and I'm so impressed with my partner that ours is one of those 3. But it's just to support itself. It's not making enough money that, you know, I'm making a great deal of salary. So I've gone back to my practicing one-on-one with people on this island, and you can imagine, you know, there's probably troubled people who have been partying, and now the party's not happening anymore. What do they do with themselves? And a lot of them have turned to more booze or more drugs. And so I have a small group of people that I get to work one-on-one with, and I don't charge a lot of money, but I emotional reward from helping people. So I've got a little private practice going on here. I've got a rehab in Phuket for people that want something more serious and significant, that we're still able to get people into Thailand for. Sober Services, which is my global practice, been going for like 13 years or something now, is still around, but I'm not prepared to leave Thailand to do anything. So if I get any work, I outsource it. And I'm just, yeah, despite having the least amount of financial income that I've had, God knows, all my life, or at least since my recovery, I'm as happy as ever. Evidence again that this isn't that money doesn't buy happiness. It's my internal emotions and my spirit that makes me happy. How I interpret my financial poverty or my financial abundance. Yeah, and I've lived with no money, and I've lived with lots of money, and I promise you, living with lots of money is much more fun. But that doesn't mean that it's not fun because you haven't got money. You just need to be a bit more creative with how you appreciate the world. I can appreciate a sunset today, and that's a sort of experience that I would easily have spent a few €100 on, you know, just a couple of years ago. The feelings that I get from going to the beach and sitting with a few hundred people and watching a sunset is profound. And the reality is I can do that 250 nights of the year on this island. You know, sometimes it rains. Sometimes, you know, It's beautiful here. I haven't worn long trousers I only wear flip-flops and shorts. Island. The aircon is on. It's at 23 degrees. This is the cold. This is it for me. Outside, it's 28, 29 degrees. It's 85, 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and it's coming up to 11 p.m. I love that. I mean, this is the rainy season. We get like two and a half months of rain.
Yeah.
It doesn't rain the whole time. It's not like some guy with a bucket being poured over you. But it will rain quite intensely for an hour or so.
So what about swimming? You used to swim a lot.
When I was in Chiang Mai, I was swimming a great deal. I had a swimming pool that was 25 meters long, so I was swimming 1 kilometer every morning. I don't have that option at the moment. There are some resorts that have got swimming pools on that you can do, but I haven't connected with them. What I have done...
Ocean swimming? No?
No, what I have done, well, there's a lot of coral reef around this island, so it's difficult to do too much deep swimming because it's all pretty shallow. But it's not the same on Samui. Samui is easier. But what I did do during the last year is I got my PADI certification and I started scuba diving. And so now once a month I organise a private boat trip out to a place called Sao Rock, which is a kind of world famous destination. And lo and behold, the first time I went out there with 25 people on this private boat, having just brave certification, I found myself swimming with a whale shark for 20 minutes. Wow. You ever seen a whale shark? The one that was a juvenile, but it's about 12 meters is twice the length of me. Just looking at me, and I was just looking at it, and we were just hanging out for 20 minutes. That's a spirituality and humanity that's profound. That's a sort of experience that's as profound as when we will go up Kilimanjaro, and you see from the top of Kilimanjaro, 6 kilometers in the air, that the Earth is round, and you have visual evidence of the curvature of the planet as the sun comes up, and you realize that we really are just on a rock hurtling through the blackness of space, and you can see with your own eyes that we are in a galaxy of a universe, and God knows what is beyond this universe. The idea of multiverses, but the reality was, with evidence, I mean, if you need to if you ever come across a flat earther, and I've found one recently, take them to the top of Kilimanjaro and show them the curvature of the planet when the sun rises, and you can see to the ends of the earth. It's amazing.
Yeah, love it. So beautiful. So tell me this. I mean, we wanted to get together to talk about pleasure and sobriety. So let's see how you can kind of summarize for us how to live a pleasurable life in sobriety.
I find a great deal of pleasure with other people. I guess is principally where I myself the most. When I'm with my friends. Friday night, I was out earlier this evening with my friends.
So what kind of connection? What kind of connection?
A connection that's based on communication. It's based on mutual respect. We have barbecues together. We go to the beach together. We do quizzes together. We play games together. We have a group that's, I don't know, a fair few people are off the island, maybe 20, 30 people. And we're not driven by drugs and alcohol, though some people drink and some people smoke and some people get high. But we're driven by our appreciation of each other for our charisma and our personality, and the fact that we're all stuck on an island together in the middle of a global pandemic and largely unaffected. I mean, largely unaffected by whatever's going on in the rest of the world. Donald Trump could do whatever he wanted, and it largely didn't affect my life. Brexit largely doesn't affect my life. I mean, I enjoy laughing at it and reading about it. What affects my life? Well, Thailand is still ultimately being run by a military government who, for better or worse, have their own ideas about how best to treat their economy, things. And that affects me, whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. And I don't really want to pass judgment either way, but I have to live with their choices as a guest in Thailand. I don't have a democratic say. I don't have a vote. Maybe I would be one of those people going to Trafalgar Square and kicking up a fuss. Over here, I don't have that right. I have to accept it. So at the moment, 9 p.m. curfew, our activity around COVID. There's also an alcohol ban across the country. I mean, I'm not really affected by it, and most people who drink and bar are largely closed.
Yeah.
COVID has affected people, but of all the places to be on this island, it was only really the last sort of we started wearing masks. So we just, well, maybe. And I was living on Phuket before, and I saw the value of masks. Perfectly happy wearing a mask, and I encourage people to wear masks. I have masks that match all of my clothes. So I have black masks, grey masks, just so I can color coordinate it. Get into masks. But we didn't up until a few months ago. You know, they try and close the gyms and that, but yeah, just go with it. Don't fight the system. Just find a space to be yourself. Yeah, I'm an anarchist, and I believe in the power of the individual to make the right choice for themselves. The reality is most people can't make the right choices for them, but I believe that more and more so people are self-educated sufficiently that they know how to do for others what they can do for themselves, and do to others what they what they'll accept for themselves. You know, bubblegum spirituality, and that those are the principles of anarchy.
Yeah.
You know, bad boy. It's not about black and breaking police vans, though it's quite good fun. But it's not about rioting and setting off bombs in embassies. That's not what anarchy is about. That's just revolutionaries. Finding a way to live your life based on your own morals in a way that doesn't hurt or upset other people, it brings you the level of contentedness, spirituality, and humanity that you quite rightly crave. So I get to live largely my life. I don't hurt other people, and I'm the rules of the land of which I'm surrounded by, in a way that it doesn't bite me on the ass. So they let me carry on doing what I do. And what do? I just see how I can help more people one day at a time.
Yeah, I love that, Ian, for you. Well, listen, you got a chance to speak about where people could connect with you, learn more about you, follow you. Is there anything else you want to share for that before we kind of wrap up?
If anyone wants to follow me, Ian_sober on Instagram. If anyone wants to find out more, if you go to my website, sober-services, there's a recommended reading page, and you can download my book for free, which is my life story. It's called It's Not About Me. Guess what it's about? Well, obviously, it's an autobiography. It's Not About Me. And it tells my journey into addiction and out the other side, and how I stopped and stayed stopped, and how I recovered. And it really deserves a second edition. And I guess my big regret from the lockdown that I experienced in Phuket was that I didn't take the time to write a second edition book. I regret that, though I was having a lot of fun during those 6 weeks. I was distracted. But so you can download my book for free. I can buy it on Amazon, but I don't make any money. I'm taking it for free. If you're concerned, someone that you care for and you want to talk to me about the nation, Ian@soberservices.com. If you want rehab, or you think you want someone that wants to do rehab in Phuket, yeah, just to me. We're happy to help make that work for you. We're pretty low cost comparatively around compared to anything else in the first world, and yet I believe that our program is magnificent. And if you're on Copenhagen, just come and find me. I'm around. It's not that hard for a guy. That's what I'm kind of known for.
Yeah, I can't wait to come. I'm definitely gonna come. I have some other friends who are there who I think you know. Well, this is great. Thanks for joining me here on the Make Living Pleasurable Show, Ian. It was so great to reconnect like this and hear all your stories and your teachings and your perspective on how to live with great recovery, sobriety with a pleasure, and all the other things that you've been able to share with us today. I'm going to leave sort of the last words to you to share whatever, wisdom you want to share here in a minute or two, and then we'll call it a day.
Don't smoke crack. Don't smoke crack without smack. What I do see is a lot of people getting paranoid because of all the cocaine they do. You need to take enough heroin so you don't get paranoid. That's not a suggestion. It's just an observation. But there is another way out. There is an easier, softer way, and it begins with abstinence, and it continues with practicing the 12 steps of recovery, one day at a time. And it's worked for me for over 20 years. I'm a better person as a result of being sober. Thanks for having me on your show, David. Lovely to see your face. Thanks for having a shave.
Thanks, Ian, for all this wisdom. I love what you're doing, who you are, and what you're bringing. So lots of love. Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
We'll be inside. See you on the next Living Pleasurable Show.
Chotdi.
Ciao.